The AI, I think it's overhyped in the short term and underhyped in the long term. So I think, but if you see the recent releases of people like OpenAI and Anthropic, right, Codex and Cloud Code, etc., it's amazing what it can do. India has probably, AI mission talks about 38,000 GPUs that are going to get extended in the new tendering that they've done. Anybody's guess, 30 to 60,000 GPUs today in India today, right? Millions of GPUs in the US. When we did our own back of the envelope calculation, and we also looked at what the analysts were saying, we expect this to go 30x in the next 5 years. It's going to at least a couple of million chips. So that's like a 30-40x growth. Blackstone they are the largest investors in this space. They've invested in the largest data center companies, QTS and AirTrunk, Corvi, which is the largest neo cloud like us, Firmus in Australia. They've also invested in OpenAI and Anthropic. So they've got the entire value chain. So because of memory prices going up, the GPUs that we bought 1 year earlier are actually 15% more expensive today. Government has recognized it, gave data centers, for example, infrastructure status. During COVID, I remember I was running at NetMagic NTT. We did not have to, we were allowed to send our staff for round-the-clock operations. You remember they didn't want people to enter offices, right, but data centers were excluded. See, India has a huge talent pool from an engineering talent pool perspective, right? A lot of people. But when it comes to depth, we still have to do like 80, 90 interviews before we get one good person. So talent is an issue, right? It's not easy to hire. But the good thing is you don't need that many people, right, to scale. I mean, AI itself automates everything. So the first thing that AI impacts is the economy. It is estimated, from what I understand, is that in India alone, by 2030, AI will add like 500 billion to our economy. I think what will succeed is the use cases. How is AI applied in the real world? Just by having a foundational model doesn't really solve somebody's problem. You need to actually translate that into something that's meaningful. And I think applied AI is where the money will be made. And that's what India should focus on.
So welcome to another episode of Clearing the Blur with Sharad. Sharad, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Sharad.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I think as a ritual, before we start the topical discussion, we have a rapid fire round for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Sure.
Internet in 1995 or AI in 2026?
Internet in 1995.
Oh, you didn't allow me to even complete the question. Which moment feels bigger?
Internet in 1995.
Your answer is still the
Absolutely.
same.
Can you elaborate on why?
I would actually say internet in 1992 because I got exposed to internet in 1992. I meant comparing internet with the AI revolution. At that time, it was just unreal that you could connect things and you could actually get access to information. I think that was more fundamental. AI is, of course, a faster revolution, but I think just the ability, the impact that created, right, it was just unreal.
But so was I think more unknown in 1992 versus what AI is in 2026?
People had access to email in the late 80s. NSFNet started from 85 to 89, and the first version of NSF. They had access to email, but they didn't have access to information at the fingertips. So I think that was a huge defining moment for me. AI is changing the world much more rapidly, but I think the foundation was laid by the internet. You couldn't have, right. AI wouldn't exist without the internet.
Without
right?
internet.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is the most misunderstood aspect of AI infrastructure?
That is plug and play. So people think it's like the earlier CPU compute cloud, or you just set up a bunch of CPUs and you can make it run. It involves entire lifecycle management. You need to understand, it's developing so fast that not everything is interoperable. You have to be very careful about how you build it, how you scale it. Everybody thinks you can just add more GPUs to the mix and it'll be faster. No, but the underlying network is very critical. There are multiple ways of doing the network. The storage becomes very critical as well. So it's not as simple as just putting infrastructure together. So it's not plug and play.
Understood.
Sovereign AI in one sentence?
I think control your own AI future. So the emphasis on sovereign AI, let's say for a country like India, is to be able to control our own AI future.
When you say future, is it because finally we are in a globally connected world?
Yeah.
I think the difficulty is calling sovereignty in a world which is so hyper connected.
Yeah. No,
That
but
itself
still
is
at the same time, fair enough. So, like for example, India is still dependent on chips from overseas. We are still not making our own semiconductors.
Yeah.
But at least if we have our own models, we can keep our data to ourselves.
Okay.
And then we can have, like, we have our own languages, we have our own nuances, we have our own, from a legal framework perspective, what kind of content we can display, what we cannot, etc. So at least we have control. We're not dependent on somebody else. To some extent, till we become, semiconductor self-sufficient, we will be dependent. And as you rightly said, it is interconnected. But I think sovereign AI is still important from a data perspective.
Yeah.
So fair
Data
to-
sovereignty is
Yeah,
probably
fair
the-
to say, apart from data, the model, the context, the use case,
Yeah.
how we safeguard the privacy and
Yeah.
avoid any kind of biases.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely, yes.
Awesome.
So if India gets AI right, what changes first? Economy, education, or entrepreneurship?
I think economy. I think the first thing that AI impacts is economy. It is estimated, from what I understand, is that in India alone, by 2030, AI will add like 500 billion to our economy. Right. So I think the first thing.
500 billion.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's that's the kind of estimate I've read. So I think it's going to impact. It's a significant percentage of our GDP will get added by AI by 2030.
So just to double click on that, this 500 billion you think is largely because of the infrastructure, new jobs created?
It's all of the above.
All of it.
It's all of the above. Productivity improvement, new ways of doing business. It is going to impact healthcare, education, everything.
I cannot add how will that reach, but yes, I think we have many white spaces today, be it how the education can get reimagined.
Education, healthcare,
judiciary and legal
Yeah.
system. I think access to a lot of these services in a country like ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unlocking the long tail, right? Where the demand is
And
not
we have
served.
many population scale problems. So
Absolutely, and we've shown that we can tackle them with DPI.
Yeah.
awesome. And foundational models or applied AI, where will the real enterprise value accrue?
Applied AI. I think while foundational models again are the foundation, people will. I think what will succeed is the use cases. How is AI applied in the real world? Just by having a foundational model doesn't really solve somebody's problem. You need to actually translate that into something that's meaningful. And I think applied AI is where the money will be made, and that's what India should focus on. Applied AI, maybe smaller models addressing a specific vertical problem, is where I think the real value lies.
Fair to say foundational models are more like your large infra or super highways, but what you finally operate on those super highways
Is what counts.
or sea lanes is where the real value is.
Correct, absolutely.
Some people talk about the refrigerator and Coke,
Yeah.
right? So value of the beverage.
Foundation. Yeah. No, fair enough. That's a good analogy.
So there is a question from our previous guest, Ramakant Vempati, founder CEO of Visa, the mental health app. The question that he has for you is, what gives work meaning?
See, the ability to impact. So what gives my work meaning is, I know we are building infrastructure for the nation, whether it was data centers earlier or now AI infrastructure. So it's going to create an impact for the Indian economy, and I think that gives you the purpose and mission, to come to work every day. And of course, you should be happy coming to work every day, right? So that for me, it's that it's basically fulfilling something that is creating impact.
Awesome.
Okay,
It was a wonderful rapid fire section, Sharad. We'll now move to a more detailed discussion. You were part of the NSF Net backbone engineering team when the commercial internet did not even exist back then. Thereafter, you built companies at two very defining technology moments: the birth of the internet, which we just spoke about, and the rise of AI. So, do you have a knack of spotting things early? Is that what is going on here? And what did these experiences teach you about building infrastructure before the world fully understands?
So I wouldn't take credit for spotting signals early because look, data centers. I would say my mentor B.V. Jagdish and K.V. Chandrasekhar, they are the ones who actually built the first built the first commercial data centers. Even on the internet backbone side, I was fortunate to have been part of the NSFNet backbone. So I think the experience that I got from the US and access to people like BV Jagdish allowed me to do this. So I was not the first in the world to do this. But seeing it successful in the US, it was only a matter of time that this would succeed in a country like India and the rest of the world. So that belief that, okay, this is something that is going to make a difference, having seen it successful, I would not take credit for seeing something that nobody else saw because it already worked somewhere else. So I think I should make that very clear.
Okay, so just to build on that, what are some things that you are unlearning now, relearning and learning?
So I think the pace of change in AI is so fast that one has to be on the toes all the time. I don't think the pace of change in my previous company was, when I started NetMagic, there was change, of course, but it wasn't so fast. Here, every day there's a new model being released, there's new chips being created, being built. There are new ways of people are coming off doing. People are thinking of now building world models instead of LLMs.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different things. The research is happening at such a fast pace. I think that's something to. I think one thing that we have to. You can't be at any point in time complacent that you've built the largest data center company, so now or you built something here, you could get disrupted anytime. So I think that's something that is one thing that we are constantly careful of. It didn't seem that way in the previous company.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not saying that wasn't challenging. That also required capital. That also required effort. But the pace of change is something that is unprecedented. And I think that's something that keeps us on our toes all the time.
So just coming here, does that create in your mind a sense of paranoia that there's so much happening around? Am I doing the right thing? Because there's obviously a lot of noise around, right? And you have to filter the sound to say, there are certain things that won't change. Let probably these things come and go.
See, AI is real, right? Infrastructure is needed to build AI applications. So I think that fundamental thing will not change. But yeah, you have to be careful. That's why we want to do long-term contracts. We don't want to invest a lot of money in something and for a short-term contract. This is, something that we've. Those are some learnings also from the past that we want to make sure that we do. So that's being fiscally prudent, right? You can do a lot of in data centers. We knew that there was huge demand in the Mumbai metropolitan area because power and fiber and local business were the highest in Mumbai. So we knew that you could build a data center without even a customer signed up, and we had reached a stage where we could build a data center without a customer signing up, and that would get sold out by the time it's constructed. But that's not the case in the GPU business, right? In the infrastructure business, the underlying GPU, constantly changes. You don't know what the customer wants. You have a sense, but so you need to be a little bit more fiscally prudent, but at the same time be ready to adapt.
So you returned to India in August 1995, and the very month the commercial internet launch happened. And in 2023, you moved quickly after the ChatGPT movement. So I think the question that Rajiv alluded to earlier, what signal tells you that the technological shift is structural rather than speculative? Because I know initially ChatGPT came, not everybody was saying this is just the beginning of probably another era and not just one more thing. And you jumped in probably both the times. So what was going on in your mind? How did you decide this is the time now to take another plunge?
So in 1995, what happened was, I came back to India in 1995. I was waiting for there to become some activity towards commercial internet. The government announced in August 95, and that, we kind of coincided our timing so that I could do something in this space. Otherwise, it was a closed, regulated space, right? From 95 to 98 itself, it was commercial internet with a monopoly of VSNL, right?
Yeah.
I would have loved to start in 95 instead of 98, right? So in the internet era, everybody was focusing on, the insight was that, so from 95 to 98, I was doing independent consulting for VSNL. In 98, when the government announced that they'll allow private players to come in, we had to raise capital if we were to do something in the infrastructure side, because obviously you need capital capex. So what we did was we did consulting for the private players. And what we saw is that they're all focusing on consumer internet, dial-up subscribers. Your valuation was, at that time, dot-coms was on eyeballs, and service providers' valuation depended on number of subscribers, right? So we said, look, let's do something different. We've seen this in the West, that internet has become mission critical for businesses. Let's just focus on whatever we can do for businesses. So data center, when we wanted to start when we started NetMagic, we had actually a business plan with multiple offerings. Of course, the core focus was data center, but there were allied offerings as well. So we thought we'll do a VPN service, we'll do a few other services, but then we focused only on data centers. So I think the signal was the fact that two things. One is seeing it successful in the US. Secondly, focusing on everybody else was going for consumers. We said we'll focus on businesses. So I think that was on the AI side. Again, I think I was a little late. Should have started in late 22 itself, when ChatGPT was released and it started going viral. I tried to convince. I would try to work within the entity framework to see if we could provide these services. At that time, entity wasn't sure. In terms of they were already doing a lot of capital expense in data centers, etc. So they still wanted to understand this a little bit more before taking the plunge. And so then I felt that this is something we should do. If I'd started 6 months earlier, I would have been the first in India. I wasn't the first. I think E2E started before us. But yeah, it was very clear. We ran a CPU cloud service called Simply Cloud in NetMagic entity, and a lot of our customers were asking us for GPUs, right? Initially for Bitcoin mining, which we were not really keen on, but then for AI workloads, right? But see, one thing is clear: generative AI is new, but machine learning was there for a long time, right? And so you required GPUs even for machine learning, and so there was the requests that used to come for GPUs started gaining traction in late 22, early 23, right? And that's what we said is, look, this is a great moment. Initially, we've thought, given that we've done a capital intensive business earlier, we should probably do a less capital intensive and maybe focus on the software aspect. So we've got software for observability, for orchestration of GPUs, and for security. We've built these platforms ourselves, and we thought we'll focus only on that. But then we realized very soon that people want full stack. People are not going to go to one person for the GPUs and one person for software. It's going to be difficult to stitch that together. They would probably want one service provider that does all. So we had two choices: either to sell to service providers, which is a tough sale, or become a full stack provider ourselves, and which is what we chose to do.
But now considering you just said that there's so many new patterns you are seeing, right? It's not just one pattern in itself like a chat GPT. Your business is now becoming in an AI era to keep looking at patterns and see how do you invest more, where do you scale up, what are the kind of things that will pick up. So do you see over a period now you have built something like a specific pattern recognition framework that is subconsciously
I think it's more intuition. I think it's just gut feel, seeing. And also you need to have the capability as well, right? So you have to have the skills and the expertise to do something. So we know how to build infrastructure, we know how to scale infrastructure, we know how to manage infrastructure, we know how to secure infrastructure. And therefore our natural, with the 25, 30 years experience, I felt that that's more the area that we should focus on. There are a lot of changes happening. Sometimes we have a small generative AI and machine learning team also. And when we've helped customers doing handholding, a lot of times there's a temptation, why don't we start the AI services practice as well? But then we felt that, there are two problems with that. One is we don't want to compete with our partners.
Right.
And secondly, we don't want to stretch ourselves too thin. We want to focus on something and just really build it significantly.
Yeah.
Right? So, there's no, it's not like any... while it is very, very fast changing, you have to be agile, you have to be constant on your toes. But under the fundamental belief that underlying everybody needs some kind of infrastructure. Now, what choice of infrastructure is something we have to be careful of, right? We are going to be silicon agnostic. Largely, we are on NVIDIA right now because that's what the customers want, and they are the market leaders, thanks to CUDA. But tomorrow, if there's a new technology that comes from another company that becomes viral, we will obviously use that for our customers.
So, talking about patterns, right? So, a little bit of personal story. I was
Yeah.
working at Oracle around the .com bust. I was literally one of the last people to get into Oracle before the job freeze and hiring freeze and all of that happened. So, one of the things that I noticed in Silicon Valley at that time is the over build out of networks, right? So, the
Level 3 and all. Yeah, I remember.
So, do you, and you say right now with AI, there's a lot of change happening and you're building for demand ahead of time. Do you think about that pattern as well, that, are we overbuilding before demand catches up? The reason why I'm asking also is there are reports, I don't know how much of the statistics is true. HBR published something that said, 95% or 94% of most Gen AI pilots end up failing, or we have a lot of pilots going on, but nothing is scaling, right? So when you look at these data points, do you see that pattern playing over again?
So look, while at that time people thought, that a lot of these telecom providers built a lot of fiber, and some of them went bankrupt as well, as you rightly said. But all that fiber now is you're finding it to be less,
Long
right?
term, there is
Long term,
difference.
so the same thing with AI. I think it's overhyped in the short term and underhyped in the long term. So I think, but if you see the recent releases of people like OpenAI and Anthropic, right, Codex and Cloud Code, etc., it's amazing what it can do, right? So I think, so look, I see a lot of people have made big announcements. There's Target announcements. There are in India there have been large announcements of 10 lakh crores, etc. There's been big announcements, but I think eventually, people are not going to build without demand, right? There has to be consumption that happens before people. So people will make announcements, but they'll probably stretch out the time period of the announcement, if of course the demand catches up. So it's same thing in our case, right? We needed capital. We've raised capital now, but we will build based on demand. We are not going to unnecessarily build and wait, because see the difference between data center business and this business. Data center, it is 15-year. Your depreciation is over 15 years, right? Your mechanical, electrical equipment takes 10 to 15 years to depreciate. Whereas in GPU infrastructure, there is new GPUs coming out every other year. So while the server's life could be say 5 to 7 years, depending on who you talk to, there are new GPUs coming out almost every 18 months, right? So you can't just speculatively build. So I think there'll be a lot of data center construction that will happen. But again, it'll be like maybe core and shell. People will take campuses, build one core and shell, keep all the permits ready so that they can build as the demand comes. But nobody's going to speculatively build. I don't see that happening, at least in India. And I think that's one lesson. You talked about learning and unlearning. One lesson that I learned from my previous stint is that we will build. So, it's good to make announcements, right? You get publicity.
I think the cost of capital, obsolescence, market demand, as long as you can calibrate these fast enough.
So before we started shooting, we were talking about this Arvind Krishna's calculation of economics of data centers, and he was talking about how 1 gigawatt data center is about 80 billion, and the plan to build about 100 of those amounts to about $8 trillion, right? More than, let's say, India's GDP. And he does a calculation that if you apply some interest fees on it, it's about $800 billion, and add all the profitability numbers of all the hyperscalers, it doesn't reach 800. So is that all a function of just announcements being made in anticipation of exponential growth?
Yeah, so I think it is a function of announcements being made in anticipation of exponential growth, but actual deployment will only happen against business. Right? I don't think people will speculatively build. Otherwise, there'll be lots of
announce the intent, but
announce the intent. Because when you announce the intent, let's say I as a service provider announce an intent. This is what I'm going to do. A lot of the global majors are going to come to me saying that, when are you doing this? We'd like to come and then I'll build it based on what business I get.
And so I think at times intent also creates some demand, because when people know there is going to be a capacity.
Yeah. So to some, and then you're competing with the world, right? So AI, there are certain AI models that can be deployed anywhere in the world. So you announce, if you make it lucrative, like we've done with the tax holiday, and if you announce the intent that this is what you're going to do, you're going to attract a lot of global majors. Absolutely. But what you're going to actually deploy, I don't think the fundamental economics is going to change. fiscal prudence requires that you will build based on, what you see. You may build a little bit extra, but you're not going to build, those numbers. And I don't think that it's even happened. I don't know what the current numbers are, but Stargate was announced a couple of years ago. I don't think they've built a gigawatt yet.
So this reminds me of long back. I had read a marketing story, and pretty much I think this is called prototype. You don't even prototype, but you just sell an idea, and then if idea is bought, go and build something and give it, because there is enough demand that you have already checked.
No, but if the idea is really good and it is something that the investors feel is feasible, there's no harm.
Absolutely.
Right? But here, there is, there could be some companies that, actually speculatively build, in which case only time will tell whether they'll succeed or not.
Right.
At least in our case, we are very clear, while we have the capital now lined up, we will only build based on demand.
Great. So when the dot-com bubble burst, many internet companies collapsed, and NetMagic focused, like you said earlier, on B2B and achieved cash flow positivity in 13 months during the time of crisis. So what strategic decision insulated you during that crisis?
So if I don't remember, if you went through Bombay during that time, every billboard had a .com
Cal
logo.
Tiger on some
Cal Tiger was one.
Buses, I remember.
Chai Time, everything, every single we didn't do any random spending, because again, see, difference was they were B2C, we were B2B, right? And so I think the fact that we were B2B itself, we didn't do any foolish spending, right? We didn't burn money in ads, etc. So we were fiscally prudent. At the same time, when we saw that, okay, a lot of the existing .com customers are going under, some not paying bills, we focused on enterprises where we thought we could add value. We focused on building up our services stack. So for example, we did manage databases, manage operating system, manage networks, manage security, all these services. So the same few clients, we just upsold all these additional services and showed value, right? Why we continued that was because we fundamentally believed in what we were doing. There was a value that we were doing. We were taking the headache of the infrastructure out and allowing the customers to focus on their core competence. And by sharing not only data center, but sharing the technical manpower, you significantly brought down the cost to the enterprise, right? And therefore, we knew that this is fundamentally a good business to happen. It was the reason why a lot of data centers went bankrupt during that time, 2001 time, was because they'd taken a lot of debt to build very speculatively, and they had their clients were not the solid clients, right? There were these .com companies which had a fancy domain name, raised a lot of money, and they did this. They didn't have a sound business model. The ones that did, like Amazon and others, are some of the world's most valuable companies. So fundamentally, at least on the enterprise side, we believed in that the fact that we were adding value, and as long as we focused on that, we were.
So the clients, and now you also spoke about the contracts and the duration of contracts. So does that experience, has that permanently influenced you in terms of how you evaluate risk today?
Yeah, absolutely. We are not going to evaluate risk. We've stayed out of contracts that are only annual, where you need to invest like $200-300 million and they're only annual contracts. We've not taken a single of those.
Okay.
Even if there is a good possibility that they may renew the next year, we don't want to do that. We want to be careful on I think that lesson that we've learned is there. I think that's one learning that will continue. One unlearning will be the pace of which change, right? Is the rate at which you change. You can't just you can't say, okay, now I'm good for the next few years or whatever. We will have to constantly look at how technology is changing and how it impacts our business.
This story also reminds me of a conversation we had with Ganesh Krishnan of Growth Story. So his earlier idea was to do emails for most .coms in the US, and that went bust, and he had to basically pivot. And that's how the whole call center idea based out of India happened. And he was talking about networks not being available at that time, voice, we were not tested as a nation. And those are multiple levels of pivots that he had to do to get that right.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree with that.
So I think picking and choosing clients and ensuring clients are resilient.
Yes, absolutely. That is a big thing.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that we learned from the previous business, right? We did have customers go bust in the .com times. So we are now very careful on when we do which customers we are investing for. We want to be.
I wonder how many firms actually do a client due diligence.
We do it.
No, that's what I said. I think that's something very unique. I
You have to
found
pick
in
your
this.
customer well.
Because everybody goes and does the vendor due diligence. It's
See-
other way around. You're saying that you look at whether your clients will.
No, we'll do
have a
both. We
sustainable
see,
model.
obviously, see, look, if it's a public cloud infrastructure and it's a pay-per-use or pay on demand kind of thing, we don't really worry about that too much. Of course, we have to still do KYC to make sure that it's not a, there are certain banned countries that we want to make sure are not using our services, but not from if worst case they don't use it, somebody else will use that infrastructure. But if I'm investing a significant amount of capital for a client, of course we'll do a client.
Amazing, Sharad. I think this is one great insight. That's why I'm just double clicking that, understanding risk at the core of a business.
Yeah.
I think is extremely important.
Absolutely.
Great.
So when NTT decided to partner with hyperscalers rather than build its own GPU cloud, you saw the gap, right? So what was the thing that you saw that others didn't?
No, so I think I would say I think it's more about risk taking. I think entity. I don't blame entity at all. I think they are doing very well on AI. They've got they're in certain sectors of the AI ecosystem. They're in the Gartner's quadrant as well, leaders quadrant. I think it was more. They were investing a lot of capex on data centers. They were investing a lot of capex on submarine cables. So whether to take additional investment on GPU infrastructure or not, it was a call. It is not as easy. I think data center, they were the third largest in the world. And as I said, they've built massive campuses in the US and India and other places we had built. And they all got, fully occupied, right? They were like booked by the time they were built. So I think investing more capital in something that was more quote unquote risky is something that they took a little while to decide. But I had already planned to start something new because I wanted to I want to learn something new, and AI is something that I was very keen to get my we are from the previous generation where we hadn't got as much exposure to machine learning and AI as, like, for example, my kids have. And so actually my kids said that we should do something in AI. They actually got me to, they studied, like my daughter studied at Stanford. She took this course from Andrew Ng, and she said, you should do his deep learning specialization on Coursera. My son and I decided to do that together. We did that, and
Wow.
they helped me do that. Wow. And so I did that for almost a year before I had the confidence to do this. And of course, we underlying the fact that we were using infrastructure was something that
you intuitively get that
that I knew that So I think that combination of fiscal prudence, having built infrastructure, and this time around it wasn't difficult to raise money because we had a successful company earlier, so there were people willing to back us.
Right. So
I think
just to extend
Avnish was the first one to back me. Yeah.
Right. So just to extend that question, right, when you look at the competitive landscape, speaking about hyperscalers, they are very much around in India as well. Then you've got large Indian conglomerates also entering the fray. So how do you differentiate yourself?
So I think, in my opinion, look, even in the previous company, we had Indian conglomerates, and I think the agility and nimbleness is what stood apart, and the ability to innovate. What we've done, for example, on how we've optimized costs, whether it's the way we've done our networking, the way we've automated our entire infrastructure deployment, whether we've automated our monitoring and observability. I think that stands us apart, and that money necessarily can't buy. And so I think our agility, is what is going to differentiate us from at least the domestic large conglomerates. Hyperscalers is a different story. I think what happens is they are massive, right? They've got like millions of customers across the world. So I think where we will try and differentiate there is on the flexibility, because they have a cookie cutter model. It's very difficult for them necessarily to customize to specific customers, etc. And I think, like, for example, if a customer wants an air-gapped cloud, we can provide it. Hyperscaler may have to think twice before doing something custom for an enterprise, right? I'm not saying they can't do it. Of course they can do it. They've shown automation to the level where they've deployed the world. So we all admire them. I think Amazon started the cloud business. All of them, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, are doing really well. And so we look up to them. So that I think that's where the real, we'll have to test. But this is something that is. So they were also large clients in the previous company, right? So Amazon, Google, and Azure were large co-location customers of ours, and we hope that they will also be clients when it comes to GPUs. So
Great. And I think by 2022, just before you started this journey at NTT, you were overseeing a global data center and submarine cable business worth over 2 billion of global revenues. What did you learn about the geopolitical risk and digital sovereignty in that role?
So I think so when it came to submarine cables, for example, right, geopolitics played a role. So there were some countries that did not allow cable landing, or you had to wait for months to get permission for cable landing. Power became an issue, right? So one of the risks was there were areas like, for example, Singapore stopped providing data center power. You get permission from the government to set up a data center. And now they're rationing that, maybe 1 or 2 a year or something. For a few years there was a moratorium. There was power shortage in certain areas, like in Virginia. There is an area which was the data center capital of the world. There's one road called the Gigawatt Drive, where in that county they ran out of power, right? So that was another learning. Geopolitical risks exists. There could be issues in, if right now we're in the middle of a war, a global war. There's 7 countries involved. The shipments might stop, right? In terms of supposing we're importing some equipment and they're coming by sea, that could get impacted. Yeah. So there are these risks. You have to deal with those. To some extent, in the good thing of being in India is India itself is a very large market. And so we believe that there's enough potential. We definitely want to go overseas, but we believe there's enough potential in the next few years.
India keeps with the current rate of growth, if we sustain.
You can build a very valuable business even with that. Yeah.
But do you believe infrastructure is now as strategic as defense or energy for nations?
Absolutely. You saw what happened during COVID. Data centers got infrastructure status. Today, banks, critical government sites, all running on infrastructure, digital infrastructure, whether it's data centers, whether it's networks, or whether it's AI infrastructure. So it's absolutely very critical. Government has recognized it, gave data centers, for example, infrastructure status. During COVID, I remember I was running at NetMagic NTT. We did not have to. We were allowed to send our staff for round-the-clock operations. You remember they didn't want people to enter offices, right, but data centers were excluded. So it is absolutely very, very mission critical. I think one of the things now we have to start looking at is how do we protect data centers and these critical infrastructure locations against drone attacks. When you see what's happening, right? That's something that we'll have to do. I mean, that level of security.
Infrastructure today
Right, and you spoke about power, right? And so looking at the ingredients that you need to run Neysa, you need land, you need power, you need maybe cooling or water. Can you speak about the readiness from India's standpoint for these infrastructural elements?
Yeah. So so in the previous business, I was actually building the physical data centers. In Neysa, we're actually building compute infrastructure. So in some sense, this problem is more with data center providers who are providing us space where we can provide our compute. But having said that, it is still important because if they don't get the land, power, etc., then we don't get data center space. So I think land, there is enough, I don't think we have an issue on land so much. To get the right land, which is where it is environmentally okay to set up data centers, where you can get an environmental clearance, where you can get fiber and power together. There are pockets where there's ample land available, but there's still, it's fast getting consumed. I think my biggest worry on this is on the power. So the reason why the Mumbai metropolitan region has almost 50% of data centers in the country, right, is because of power availability, right? When I used to talk to Tata Power and Adani officials when I was building data centers, the best thing that we did here was to privatize power, right, in Mumbai. And by privatizing power, it helped, you don't have to go to a government MSCDCL office and wait for an appointment to get sanctioned. Here you would have Tata and Adani executives come to your office and bid, fight for business, right? That was one. But the other, but more importantly, they were very quick in upgrading transmission and distribution capabilities. Right? So I think if the government is able to, I don't think India has a power deficit as such, right? We have, I think, what I understand is I think we have roughly 500 gigawatts of power, 250 gigawatts is renewable and 250 gigawatts is traditional sources. And currently data center industry is consuming about 1.4, 1.5 gigawatts. So that's, I think we're at, I think less than 1% of total power consumption. And that even if it quadruples in 5 years, by 2030, it's supposed to go to like 7 gigawatts or so, will still be like 3% because we're adding more power. So I don't think overall yes, there are maybe certain pockets. Like, I remember when we were operating data centers in Mumbai, we never had any downtime of power. We had to use our generators maybe other than for testing on a daily basis once in a while in 1 or 2 years. And there was a big event, that the grid failed or something like that once in a few years. And at that time, the Tata Power guys used to say that, look, we can show you statistics that Mumbai power is even better than New York's, right? But that's not true across the country. So when in Chennai, in Noida, in Bangalore, we used to have power outages at least once or twice a week, right? So I think that's also improved. But I think power is one area where we really need to, because a lot of places the power is controlled by the government, right? The authority running the power is a government agency. And that may not necessarily be, because they have their own challenges of procurement. They have to do tendering every time they do procurement, etc. So sometimes they may, whether they'll be fast enough to meet the demands is a question. But overall, I don't think as a country we are not, we are okay as far as power is concerned because of the amount of renewable energy that's also come in and overall power resources that we have. As of now, there is no immediate threat on power.
But I'm sure the way states are fighting for getting more industries in their states, they probably will also fight to get more data centers going forward.
Yeah, they are. Each state has, many states have fabulous data center policies.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes I've told the state governments, you don't need to actually give so many incentives because data centers is a profitable business, right? But
ensure land and power.
Ensure the permits are done fast. It takes ages to get permits, right? Whether it's right from environmental clearance to the actual. And I can understand you need an environmental clearance because end of the day, right, you're generating a lot of power. So you have to show that your part towards carbon neutrality, etc. So you have to make sure that the data center industry doesn't impact the environment adversely. You don't want to be in a residential area where noise, there's noise pollution, for example, when your generators, etc. run.
So on that, sorry, please.
Yeah. No. So as a result, so I understand, but it should be faster approvals.
Yeah.
And I think state governments that do that, like for example, what Andhra has done, right? They've attracted all the global majors coming to Andhra because
once you get a couple of big guys coming in, everybody gets a signal that you're far more welcoming in terms of
welcome, and then you also get business opportunities.
Absolutely.
So Elon Musk is talking about data centers in space. What do you make of that?
So when Sam Altman was asked this question in the AI summit recently, he said it's at least 10 years away.
Okay.
Elon Musk is saying that he'll do it within a year. I think GPUs can go to space, but I just to me, I still haven't done the cost benefit analysis. I know it's become a lot cheaper to send payloads to the US, to the space. Earlier, it used to cost, I think, millions of dollars, and now it's like hundreds of, 50 kg costs like 100, 200K or something like that. But, one rack of, one fully, GB300 rack is like almost a ton. I don't know what the economics is saying. And my other thought is, what if something goes wrong? GPU failures, by the way, one thing is, one big difference between CPU cloud and GPU cloud is that earlier we used to hardly have any system failures. Here, GPU failures are like pretty significant. You have to constantly replace GPU. So while you can automate everything, you still sometimes need to do physical replacements. So how will you do all of that? So it's only time will tell. There are two different camps. Some people say it's imminent. Some people say it's a while away.
Maybe that's where the new jobs will come from. Maybe some of us will go to space and maintenance work.
Yeah, so time will tell. I think right now there's enough demand on Earth, so we are focusing on Earth. Yeah.
So I was just doing a bit of AI search on Neysa before getting in here, and I think we'll just talk. My next few questions are on where you are today in this journey. What it picked as the top 5 key headlines was it's an AI native cloud platform, focuses on GPU infrastructure and scalability with end-to-end AI lifecycle support. India's first, even though you said you were not the first, it still says India's first, enterprise-centric approach and positioned as an AI infra layer for builder. Anything that you think it missed out in summing in 5 sentences?
I think enterprise approach. Enterprise approach. We are probably the leaders and the first. I think not everybody was going after enterprise, but yeah, we were not the first to deploy GPUs in the country. I think democratization of infrastructure in the country. I mean, it kind of covers that in those 5 sentences, but we want to, make it available to all, and so we have it in 2 flavors. One is the bare metal flavor for training purposes or for enterprise where they want air-gapped solutions, and then we also have a public cloud offering. So it kind of captures. I think my marketing team has done a good job.
You got the right prompts. Okay, so your recent funding round of 1.2 billion in capital. I think this time it made headline because of the amount of capital you raised. Of course, this is a capital-intensive business, and you also, like you said, you wanted the right kind of capital and also a long-term commitment as you were building this whole GPU infrastructure. But I think raising capital is one thing, but like you mentioned earlier, the capital allocation strategy, and that's where you're looking at how do you deploy funds into assets, especially the kind of assets that depreciates much quickly than the typical data center infrastructure. So how are you looking at, some part you did cover that you're looking at the demand and then thereby your lead time and
utilization trends, lead time, and then demand, and then of course take or pay contracts. So the large contracts, we are under discussion for some large take or pay contracts, which will be longer duration contracts.
How do you underwrite these demand visibility and utilization rates before committing to these kind of clusters?
No, so there are so really, so let me tell you a little bit about the market itself, right? India has probably, AI Mission talks about 38,000 GPUs that are going to get extended in the new tendering that they've done. Anybody's guess, 30 to 60,000 GPUs today in India today, right? Millions of GPUs in the US. When we did our own back of the envelope calculation, and we also looked at what the analysts were saying, we expect this to go 30x in the next 5 years. It's going to at least a couple of million chips from 40, 50,000 to, so that's like a 30, 40x growth, right? Now, just to put things in perspective, 8,000 GPU cluster, right? 8K cluster of a GB300, rack of with 8K GPUs, multiple racks, about 115 racks. That itself will cost about 600 million, right? So you're talking about 16 to 20,000 GPUs, depending on the kind of GPUs, is what 1.2 billion will get us, right? 20,000 GPUs.
But do you see the cost of GPUs will come down?
No. So what is happening? So I'll take that in a minute. But so 16,000 GPUs is not even, if you're talking about 2 million, going to 2 million, 16,000 GPUs is nothing. So I think we need a lot more capital. The reason we chose Blackstone was they are the largest investors in the space. They've invested in the largest data center companies, QTS and AirTrunk. They've invested in the CoreWeave, which is the largest neo cloud like us, Firmus in Australia. They've also invested in OpenAI and Anthropic. So they've got the entire value chain of this thing. So that's why we invested. Now, in terms of cost of GPU coming down, right? It's actually been pretty counterintuitive. We thought it's like if you look at the iPhone, right? When iPhone 13 came, then 15 came, then 17 came, whatever. Each time a new iPhone was released, the previous model becomes a little cheaper, and the new model is obviously you pay at a premium. And we thought the same thing will happen in GPUs, but actually what's happened is the memory prices have gone up. So the memory prices have gone up so significantly because we are out of, literally all the memory stocks of Hynix and Samsung and Micron is kind of over, right? I mean, they've sold it, they've allocated it all till I think end of 26 or 27. So so because of memory prices going up, the GPUs that we bought 1 year earlier are actually 15% more expensive today. So this is something we had not thought of, right? We also thought it will come down, and it should come down, right? When the customer wants a newer model, but the prices even of the newer models have gone up because of memory, and the price of the earlier models have also gone up. So it's actually not come down.
And in terms of demand, where are you seeing large adopters from? Are these enterprises? Are these government? Where are these large pools of customers sitting today?
Great question. So we've divided our sales into 6 categories. So I've taken the enterprises, whether it's financial, manufacturing, healthcare, media as one, and these enterprises we see maximum demand in the banking and financial sector, right? BFSI sector, whether it's payment gateways, whether it's banks, etc. We see maximum demand coming there.
Both banks and fintechs.
Yeah,
put together.
both. That in my opinion is the largest. They're the first adopters. They've got a lot of data. They need to automate.
BFSI, I think it's going to be that industries are the forefront.
Then there is the research and education. So obviously all the IITs, ISC are doing cutting edge research on AI. So they need a lot of GPU infrastructure. On the government side, there is. Of course, the digital native, before I come to the government, the AI native companies or even the digital native companies are always the early adopters on new technology. So that's a great market segment. The government side, we have 2 main categories. One is the AI mission, where they're funding for training purposes, research companies, whether it's private or non-private. If it's government-funded agencies, they're giving up to 100% grants, like they've done with Bharat Gen. Or they've given somebody like a Fractal, which is doing some research. They've given a 40% subsidy. So that is one area. We are part of the AI mission group, and then there is the centers of excellence that the government has set up. They've set up 4 or 5 centers of excellence in healthcare, education, smart cities, agriculture. And now recently announced one in partnership with Columbia and IIT for manufacturing. So these centers of excellence also require because that's one of the government's mission is to improve healthcare and to improve smart cities and improve agriculture, etc., and education. So we are seeing demand from all these. The other 2 areas that we're focusing on, one is partnerships. So a lot of the system integrators need AI for their clients. Now those could be in one of the earlier categories, and there are these new builders. One of the things AI has done is earlier India used to be the back end of the world, right? We used to do outsourcing, BPO, software development, but more from where we dedicate people who would write good software for somebody else, not so much focus on product. Now we have these product companies that are building products using AI, because AI has now leveled the playing field, and they are building products not only for India but also for the world. So if we get these product companies on our platforms, then every time they sell that product, our platform gets sold. So that's another area. And last but not the least is the global, with this 2047 tax holiday that the government has announced. A lot of global cloud providers are looking at inferencing clusters in India. And that's where the real scale will come, right? And so that's what we're also focusing on.
Awesome. So when we were interviewing Dr. Ajay Chaudhary of National Quantum Mission, he was talking about the interface between quantum and AI. Do you foresee a step shift happening in terms of GPUs to maybe quantum also coming into play?
I think that will take a while. We are tracking that well. There's you're probably aware of this fabulous company called QPi AI. I was fortunate enough to go to their labs in Bangalore and see what they've built. They've built a 64 qubit computer, and obviously quantum will. I think it's still, in my opinion, for it to become widespread, commercially adoptable, it's still a few years away. But yeah, they are also looking at using AI. So some parts they will offsource to GPUs, and some parts they'll use it for using quantum computing. So yes, there will be a marriage of that soon, in a few years. Yeah. When I say soon, I mean midterm, not in the next 12 months. Yeah.
In terms of people readiness, right? So you're building something really high tech and in the cutting edge of things. Do you find talent to be an issue? Are you able to find the right kind of talent? And what did you have to do differently this time around, given that it's about AI and you're working on cutting edge?
So I think, India has a huge talent pool from an engineering talent pool perspective, right? A lot of people. But I think when it comes to depth, we still have to do like 80, 90 interviews before we get one good person. right? So
89.
yeah, sometimes it could be in some case 30, 40, whatever. It's not like you can just find some, it's not easy because a lot of people claim that they know stuff. So I think that talent with depth is not easy, right? So we like people who play around on their own and explore on their own. We don't really worry too much about their degrees. So we give tests to them. Whether if it's software, then we'll give them a software test. If it's engineering, if it's like systems, we'll give them a test on. We give them a real world example of how you would configure this, or how would you make sure that this remains up. If this happens, what will happen, etc. So we give them really technical tests to make sure that they're technical. It's not superficial, and most people don't clear those tests. But when you find somebody, they're really good, right? So talent is an issue, right? It's not easy to hire, but the good thing is you don't need that many people, right, to scale, because AI itself automates everything. So I think we've got a great team. We've gone through that rigor and got a great team.
And like you spoke earlier about, I think AI gives us India an opportunity to move from the whole outsourcing mindset to a product mindset, because you can now build products for the world sitting here. I think what are the structural shifts that you see must happen for this shift to really happen and be there for the long term?
Actually, as long as we build the infrastructure for these developers to use to build their products, right? As long as they have access to infrastructure, initially they would access this infrastructure overseas. Now we're building it in India, so it becomes more, from a latency perspective, from a regulatory perspective, and also from maybe hopefully from a cost perspective as well. It becomes more economical for them to access infrastructure. And I think the underlying system of education, as long as we have more AI-centric courses in universities, so they get access to better talent. What does somebody need? They need infrastructure. They need talent, right, to build. Because I think from a ability to think perspective, a lot of the coding challenges have largely been solved. Okay, I would still need. I'm not saying it's 100% AI, maybe, but it's significantly solved. And so I think now you need more product managers who can think of new product ideas and then just use AI to code, right? Or use the help of AI to code, if you will. So I think India, for building for India, India has 22 different languages, so many different dialects, its own challenges. So there are a lot of opportunities here that there are some very successful companies targeting them. But the amazing thing is I've come across companies that have from India solved, competed with the best in the world, and I actually have $100 million run rates in very short spans of time from India, building for the world. So companies like Emergent, companies like InVideo, amazing examples of companies building here, product companies from here, and the whole world adopting their technology.
So, like we spoke earlier, I think the foundational model, of course, is something where neither we are looking like dominating, nor are we, but because that's a market where you have many players globally who have come in and have a reasonably faster, I would say, or a diverse approach to how they are playing. But for India to really play and win in this space of AI value chain, what are the realistic opportunities for India? I mean, data center, like for example, we were talking earlier. Where else can you think India can really play a meaningful role?
So I think even on the foundational models, right? I think when you look at Indian languages and you add that, if you take two companies, and there are many companies that the government has funded, but the two companies that I'd like to talk about, one is Sarvam, one is BharatGen. Both have built fairly large. Sarvam debuted a 105 billion parameter model. BharatGen is in the process of building a trillion parameter model. So there are companies that are building, a lot of people felt that this is not possible in India, but it's actually happening. Having said that, I think the real value will be on how you use AI. I mean, the use cases, the verticals, focusing on verticals. It could be through a small model. It could be by leveraging a large model. That's separate. But the point is, how does AI help not only in productivity, but how does AI fundamentally change the way the business operates? Right? Newer revenue streams for business. How does AI create that, right? And that's what I think we can do. and we are doing. And I think that's what will, though the companies that focus on that, there's a huge value that these companies can generate if they focus on those.
Awesome. And I think we could have gone on, Sharad, but before we wind up, here is a little ritual that we follow on clearing the blur. Before we conclude this episode, do you have any question that you want to ask our next guest?
So what I'd like to ask the next guest on your show is, what are 3 key mantras for success?
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Interesting. Thank you so much for this conversation. It was super enriching, and a few takeaways for me personally. One is your ability to time your ventures, although you feel like you were a little late. In the grand scheme of things, your ability to spot things and the pattern recognition that Deepak was talking about, I think that's something maybe you want to patent sometime. That's one. Second is the risk-taking ability as well, because you're producing things ahead of time. So to be able to see that through. I don't know how you are sitting so calmly and you have a very calm demeanor. I'm sure a lot of future is uncertain with a lot of things happening, but I find in you as a leader that calm to think about the long term. I think those are key takeaways for me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I think, Sharad, you have operated at 2 important inflection points, the birth of commercial internet and now right at the AI eras. And I think the focus on fundamental, prudent capital allocation, understanding risk and patterns, and also looking at the kind of customers that you want to work with a long-term vision. I think a lot of interesting takeaways for many founders, people who are looking around. And I hope, just like for us, it's been of value to many of the viewers who are going to watch this podcast. So thank you once again for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Deepak and Rajiv, and it's been of value to me. You made me think a lot, so thank you so much.
Glad to hear that. Thank you.
And to our listeners, if you are serious about understanding what is the signal and what's the noise, I think you can't find a better episode than the one we just had with Sharad. Because in the noise that we are all living with in AI era, it's important to find the real signal and stay true, find where the long-term value is. And that's what Rajiv and we bring through the Clearing the Blur, to take all the noise out and get you to focus at what's real. Till then, stay curious.